90% of the depositors in Silicon Valley Bank, their deposits exceed $250,000. Banks in Oklahoma, in rural towns, are about to pay a special fee to be able to bail out millionaires in San Francisco. Over the past 5 days, we watched the collapse of the Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank in New York, a big bank in San Francisco, a much smaller bank in New York. Both of them, we've now had the FDIC step in, and they're going to save every single person in the bank and to be able to make sure they're whole. Now, that's very different than typical. Most Americans know you're insured up to $250,000, but the Biden administration stepped in and said, oh no, everyone's going to be kept 100% whole. The comment that's come out of it has been, well, we're going to make sure no taxpayers have to be able to cover this, though. And then if you listen closely, the very next statement is, it's going to come from an assessment on the banks instead. Now, let me tell you what that means. One of the wealthiest banks in America, that is mostly millionaires that actually bank there. In fact, to show that, 90% of the depositors in Silicon Valley Bank, their deposits exceed $250,000. Okay, 90%. That's not normal for a bank. In that bank in San Francisco, all of their depositors are going to be bailed out. And the way that they're going to be bailed out is they're going to put a special, what they're calling an assessment, on banks across the country. So let me tell you what's happening in the next few months. Banks in Oklahoma, in rural towns, are about to pay a special fee to be able to bail out millionaires in San Francisco. Now, what Oklahoma banks and bankers had to do with that bank failure in San Francisco, I have no idea. But the comments being made over and over again, no taxpayer is going to be affected by this. I'm sure my bankers would be glad to know that they don't pay taxes anymore, apparently. And I'm sure every person that banks there will be interested to know when their bank fees go up and when their interest rates go down to be able to cover what happened in San Francisco. Now listen, I don't want to see a contagion of banks either, but let's be honest. What's really happening is a backdoor tax increase on every single American's, just not using the IRS to do it, it's using community banks to do it all over the country, to charge them a quick higher fee, which they know will mean a higher fee to the people that are members of their bank. And that's how it's going to get covered. Rather than the typical way this would get covered by actually taking that bank, actually doing an auction, auctioning it off to other banks to be able to take it in. I look at that and say, you can't make this stuff up in some ways. To be able to say, no taxpayer is going to be affected, but quietly, taxpayers across the country are going to be affected by this.